at the Senior Open before it starts at Omaha Country Club. And I think the day is like the 7th of July. It's either the 7th or the 8th, and I apologize. My memory is failing me, but it's one of those 2 days, but it is definitely that Wednesday. And then July 23rd, I believe, Tim, is when we're going to have our Good Life celebration at the barn. And yeah, there it is. And we have a fantastic band playing, Nikki Boulet's band. I think it's called Finest Hour. And it's going to be an awesome party. So we're really excited about that. And significant others will be included in that. And then on September the 8th and 9th, Tim, is that right? That we're going to have our Page event, and that's going to be at the Cottonwood Hotel, which of course is the old Blackstone Hotel, which if you haven't had an opportunity to be down there, is really a phenomenal venue. So, and sprinkled in there, we're going to have a lot of other get-togethers, and when we see what happens with the mandates on congregating, on May 25th, we'll Jody's there. Hi, Jody. We'll start to discuss how we're going to be together as far as sales meetings. We haven't made a judgment about June, but I think a few people are popping in here. I think it might make sense in June to look at another outdoor venue, although I have what I call non-voting shares. People smarter than me will figure that out. But I think that we'll do something that's going to be more significant as far as getting together in June and July for those particular sales meetings. And we will not get rid of Zoom by any stretch of the imagination, but we're going to weed off it. Not weed off it. I said that incorrectly. I shouldn't say it that way. We're not going to wean off Zoom, but we're going to augment it with more of these personal, because I thought, Leslie, for those of you that weren't at the sales meeting, and Tim, you can tell me if you agree or disagree with this, but I thought Leslie did a really good job of pointing out that we've had kind of a mind shift. That before we were like, oh, we want people to be here in person. And if they're not in person, then, if they're only on via Zoom or, electronically, or if we tape things, then we're not getting the full effect. And we've kind of changed our mind on that. We've kind of thought, hey, we want people to have as much interaction with trainings and best practices as we can. And if that means that it makes more sense for them to do it, virtually, then we want to give people the resources to do that, because we think people have a great appetite for getting together. So we think we're going to be able to have a wonderful rest of 2021 and kind of have the best of both worlds. So that's kind of our mindset, is we want to do both. We're going to record these. I think I want to give kudos to Tim again about building this library, which has been amazing, and having all these trainings and all these ATAs and all these events that we have, that it's possible to record and then put them in this library in a YouTube capacity. Tim, do you want to speak to that just very briefly?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tom. It was hard to get started, but now it's not that hard. We're pretty consistent about it. So every class, every ATA, every AMA, every sales meeting, well, not the ones in person, we record them, and I have those up on the YouTube channel the same day. So even this ATA will be on the YouTube channel by the end of the day. So and it's really nice, because if you go there, you can see how many hits we're getting. They're very popular. The content is awesome, and we get a lot of clicks on these videos from just you guys. So please keep watching them. And just so you know, since Tom asked me, the AMAs and the other training, there's some good training in there that even existing agents could use, like CMAs, buyer's appointments, listing appointments. I think you'll really enjoy it. So please take advantage of it.
Tell people where to go to get that content again.
It's thegoodlifegrowroom.com. If you go to thegoodlifegrowroom.com, that's our URL that takes us to our YouTube channel. If you ever forget that, you can go into YouTube and type in our entire name, Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, The Good Life Group, and it will immediately pop up. But thegoodlifegrowroom.com is our YouTube page.
And I want to really give some kudos to I'm glad we waited, Tim, because we about doubled our number here.
I know.
So and I'm sorry for the people that are waiting, but hey, I want to give kudos to the people that have taken the time, and I know I don't want to forget anybody, but I know there's been several people on this call that have done really great videos, and the two that come to mind, and you tell me, and I don't want to leave, I'm not trying to leave anybody out, so if I did, please don't be offended. Matter of fact, put in the chat, hey, I did one, because I want to know that. But I know Krista Luther spent some time doing videos, and I know Ben Smale has spent some time doing these videos, and talk about two talented people. And I don't know who else, but I'm looking at some pretty talented people that we're probably going to hit up because they're so good at what they do. I look at these things when we get on these, and I know it sounds maybe, kind of happy, like we say it's inappropriate, but happy horse shit. Some people say that. I know it sounds kind of over the top, but I really am so proud. I see every face that gets on, and I'm proud of those people. I'm proud of who they are as people. So the fact that we've been able to do these videos, and the fact that we're able to get together now, I'll tell you what, it was a tough year, that April to April, or that March to April, or maybe even March to May. But I think Leslie said it's like 450 days since we had a face-to-face sales meeting. That's just a long time to not be together, and it sucked. And I'm so excited and happy that we get to share each other's company on a more regular basis, and I think obviously it's just going to get better. So with all that said, I think I've wasted about 12 minutes of everybody's life, so you can bill me. Probably not solvent enough to pay it, but you can bill me for your time. Okay, so Acres of Diamonds. So what I'd like to do is maybe spend just a few minutes kind of going over kind of general tenets of this book. And this guy's name is, and I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that? The dude's name is, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's like Jennison Franklin. And he's a pastor's son, and he's a preacher, and he's like an evangelist. He's in the South. He was, Gainesville, Georgia. And he built kind of this mega church, and he is a really cool dude. And I will tell you, the book is not going to be for everyone, because it has a very biblical element to it, even though it has. But I would ask you, if you're not a super, whatever, spiritual or biblical or person, I would ask you to still read it, because, or consider reading it, or read parts of it, because it has a very, how shall I say it, secular message that's intertwined in that thought. Would you agree with that, Tim?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And so the premise of the whole thing, which is why we thought it was appropriate ATA title, is that he tells a story. He was out in a Middle Eastern country, and I'm going to butcher what it was. And admittedly, like I always did in school, I read this book last night. I read it from cover to cover, but I read it like all last night, because Carol's like, hey, you're going to do this ATA on Acres of Diamonds. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't read the book, but I knew the story. And the main context of the story is this. He's in a Middle Eastern country, kind of trying to find himself, this author. And this guy that's his tour guide down a river or something is giving him this kind of parable, or this story. And it's about this Middle Eastern guy. And I think it was like, his name was like Ali Hafed or something. And the guy what happens is the guy owns a farm of some sort. And he's got camels and all this stuff. And he's got this farm, and he's like, and some priest comes to him and says, hey man, they're making millions of dollars mining diamonds all over this other region. And so he's like, oh, I want millions of dollars. I'm sitting here toiling on this farm. I'm okay, but I'm not doing that great. I could do so much better. I want all this money with these diamonds. And so he sells his farm and goes to this plentiful land and starts searching for these diamonds all over, trying to find these diamonds. And what ends up happening is he ends up basically squandering the little bit, the money that he has. He is basically, he left his family. He's essentially in, kind of horrible place mentally, financially, spiritually. I mean, you name it, the guy's broken. And he actually commits suicide, and like a tidal wave comes and he perishes in the ocean or whatever, like hardcore parable stuff, right? But nonetheless, and then come to find out, the priest goes to his old farm where the guy's farming and sees a stone on his mantle and says, you've got a diamond there. And the guy's like, oh no, that's just a stone that I found the camel's toe pulled up in a stream, and it was just kind of cool, so I stuck it on my mantle. Well, he says, no, I know diamonds. Well, anyway, as luck would have it, of course, the farm that the guy sold is riddled with diamonds, and the guy who buys the farm then has this great fortune. And of course, the guy that didn't, is sadly died of suicide. So the moral of the story, of course, is, hey, there's a lot of opportunities that are there's two kind of fundamental themes. One is, look what's available to you. There's a lot of opportunity that's right in front of us that we don't necessarily understand or appreciate because it's too familiar to us. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Like, sometimes chasing this, this dream or this kind of outside the box mindset for just chasing its sake is not the answer. Sometimes you can achieve those great accomplishments by exhausting the resources that are readily available to you, and you don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel. So those are the two kind of fundamental themes that came of this. And the reason that we think it is so relevant in the real estate world is because people in an environment like this, when people are like, oh my God, I can't write another offer for a buyer. I can't put these people in the car anymore. I've had people call me and say, I can't even call my buyer and tell them they didn't get this house. It's the 12th one or whatever. And we need to represent those people's interests, and we need to be honest with them. And it's going to be disproportionate to the time we've spent versus the financial reward. And there's some of that just kind of comes with the territory, and we have to do it. But the reality is that there's a lot of opportunities as it relates to listings that at our fingertips. They're just a little bit more obscure than in other markets. So instead of waiting for the phone to ring, or instead of, just working our kind of fundamental opportunities in our database, we have to find ways to farm our environment in a little bit untraditional way, or an unprecedented way, to create listings, because it's all about listings right now. And we are doing a better job as a company, which is one of the reasons we've had so much success, disproportionate success to the market. We have slowly but surely, as a young company, we are closing the gap between the representation of buyers and listings. And it's not unusual for a company like ours to be skewed to buyers, because we're only 5.5 years old. And we have a younger agent population as a rule than some of the more mature companies in our market. So consequently, when you start in real estate, or you're younger because of first-time home buyers and what have you, you're going to have a tendency to be skewed towards buyers. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. And then as people's businesses mature, Tim Reeder's a prime example. Tim started early on, 20 years ago. He had zillions of buyers. Now he learned long ago, even with the advent of 2008, 9, and 10, when things were really tough, he still knew he was going to get a greater return on his time and be disproportionately rewarded if he worked with sellers and concentrate on listings, even in a recession-based economy where listings were sitting longer. So if you kind of take that premise, that's on steroids right now. Well, there's Jay Hayning. How are you, Jay? That's on steroids right now. So anything we can do to earn more listings, we need to do. And people say, well, I just can't get any traction. I can't, or some people say that, or they're feeling that way. So I wanted to talk about today some different strategies real briefly, and then I want to get a lot of input on what other people are thinking. And I've been really preaching this almost to the point of probably nauseum for some of you, because I feel like it's so important, it's so important to leverage the strategy of what a buyer to become or a seller to become buyer's opportunity is, because far too often we hear, oh, I got 6 people that would list, but they have nowhere to go. And they just don't have any opportunities from the standpoint of buying. And they're just that is just inundating their thought. So there's kind of 2 paths that I think we need to think about when we have people that are sitting on the fence. One is we need to think of creative ways to encourage them to list their house and take advantage of this great interest rate environment. The second, and we'll talk about that, but the second component of it is that when people are thinking that they're overpaying, they're right. But with this caveat, the market is certainly high right now, and prices are extraordinarily high relative to historic areas. We're seeing 27 to 30%, depending on the neighborhood, depending on the scope, depending on the price point, from 3 years ago. 12 to 13% this year alone. So those are extreme increases. But what you have to put into context for these sellers to be buyers is when they say, well, I'm going to be a trade up buyer, I don't want to trade into such an expensive market, is that we have to understand and appreciate and be able to articulate the benefit associated with the interest rate environment versus a prior interest rate environment. And we need to be able to use a graphic to demonstrate that. And from a simple math standpoint, one that I've just memorized because I think it's fairly consistent in this market, is that if you take that 30% or 25%, and you take a house that was, let's say 4 years ago was $300,000. And let's say that the interest rate at that time was 4.875, which would be low historically, right? Extremely low historically. And you take today's environment, now that's 300,000, and you take today's environment, a house that's 375,000. And let's say that interest rate is 2.875. So exactly a 2% differential. That payment is the same. So, and if you look at the long term, as interest rates rise, and they could very well be well over 4.875 in the next couple of years, especially with the way inflation is looking. And they hold the house for a period of time, let's say over at least 5 years. I'm telling people if they can't stay 5 years, it's probably not a good decision to buy right now. But if they can stay at least 5 years, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, in my opinion. And this is all conjecture. Nobody has a crystal ball. But gosh, if it's a forever home, like 10 years or 15 or 20 years, and you can lock in an interest rate that's 3 or 3.25 or 3 1/8 or 2.875, it is the smartest time probably in history to buy, which is the most counterintuitive thought that you could provide a person at this particular juncture. But you have to look at it in the context of your buying power as it relates to the interest rate. Now, if you're a cash buyer, it might change your tune. But on a cash buyer, what I would say is pay cash to get the property, but then refinance, because if you can get your money at 3% and the stock market has historically done 11%, why would you have money? And theoretically, you have an interest deduction, at least on a portion of that principal balance from the standpoint of your taxes, your federal and state income taxes. Then why wouldn't you let something, especially if it's can grow, if it's a 401k or something, it can grow tax deferred. Why wouldn't you take advantage of that cheap money and utilize that? So even a cash buyer, you could say, listen, pay cash to get it done. If it's a 15-year commitment or a 20-year commitment, who cares? Go back and refinance. There's going to be some title fees. There's going to be a few expenses. But the benefit in the long term, based on that interest rate and the time value of money and your opportunities, are so immense that it only makes good sense to leverage that interest rate environment in whatever capacity you're at. The other thing I think we need to be thinking about is our FHA buyers from 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, and calling those people, because they may not even recognize their opportunity to upgrade. And many of those people from 5 or 6 years ago that paid 200,000 with an FHA loan, 5 or 6 years ago, house is priced at 200,000. It was almost like boilerplate, right? House is priced at 200,000. You pay the market's in equilibrium. You pay the asking price, seller pays 5,000 in closing costs, and you get the deal done. It's a 2-minute conversation and it's done. There's only one offer and it gets to the finish line. Everybody's happy. That's euphoria, by the way. 2015 is when it was euphoria for a real estate agent. So those FHA buyers at that time that are sellers now, here's the thing you have to remind yourselves of. You can't, unless they have refinanced, which many of them have, but not all of them. If they have not refinanced, or even if they did refinance and they didn't have 80% down at that particular time, or excuse me, have 20% equity at that particular time, they have private mortgage insurance. So they have that premium of that mortgage insurance. And people say, well, yeah, but Tom, most of those people have refinanced. I don't disagree. Most of those people have refinanced, but not all of them. If you look at this, to call your lender of choice, there is a big portion of people that never refinance. They just don't, because they think they're going to move and then they're not sure. And then they were going to, and then they lost their job, or they got a new job, or this happened, or grandma moved in, or whatever. So you need to be very cognizant of the fact that there are many people out there in your database, or people that you can farm that are in neighborhoods that you've done business, that you can send postcards to, that can demonstrate this difference and this opportunity from the interest rate environment, that would be able to get rid of that mortgage insurance because they have equity now, and they could combine it with some cash that they have, upgrade their house, and not only are they benefiting from the interest rate differential, they're benefiting from the standpoint that they don't have mortgage insurance. And people would say, well, yeah, but that's a small. If it's two people and you put and you got a buy sell, and it's 600 grand on the buy sell, and you can find two people to do it with, that's $1.2 million. That's 35,000 bucks. So let's say it's 30,000 net, 25,000 net, whatever the number is, it's real money. It's a house payment and then some for most of us. So I just think we need to be thinking about, from the standpoint of these acres of diamonds, we need to be thinking about the opportunities that are there where our expert information and knowledge can come out and manifest itself in an opportunity for a potential seller, and that's going to be a buyer that they don't have. Now, strategies to get them, because they still say, well, we'll have nowhere to go, we'll have nowhere to go, we'll have nowhere to go. The first thing is what people hate, and that's they can rent. For crying out loud, they can rent. And I don't know why people are so adamantly opposed. I mean, moving is not enjoyable, but it's possible. And when you demonstrate to them the math on that and the benefit of that from the standpoint of getting the price that they're going to get, because of course they got to sell, if they have to sell to buy, a contingent offer is essentially a non-starter in today's market. So we might as well not even go in with that strategy, right? We've got to go in with the strategy of, hey, we've got to find a way where these people can't write contingent. Somehow we've got to find a way, a line of credit, bridge loan, whatever it is. So in some instances, we can do it with a HELOC, and we can that's a conversation for a different day. But these are the strategies that we need to be cognizant of. The other thing is, people will wait, and they will wait, and they will, for somebody to buy something, find something. They will wait a long time. I've seen people wait as much as 6 months where they'll wait. Am I breaking up, Tim? Okay. I got the little circle going, so I never know. Okay. So the other thing is rent backs. We hate rent backs. I always said, don't ever do a rent back. God, the air conditioner breaks. Who's going to pay for the air conditioner? Normally I would say, don't ever do a rent back. Don't ever do pre-occupancy. Don't do post-occupancy. They're terrible. I'm telling you today, do post-occupancy, because for your seller, it doesn't really hurt them. Right. And so if you're a listing and you're trying to get your seller out, do post-occupancy. Here's the thing. You don't want to just extend the closing, because you still have to, if they can't qualify for both houses, you've got the same problem. You're having to write a contingent offer. It's a non-starter. So what you want to do is get them under contract, get the thing sold. If you have 5 or 6 offers, and I understand it's softening a little, but it's still, there's no inventory relative to demand. If you have 5 or 6 offers, you find the one, even if it's financially a little bit less appealing, it's still going to be very appealing financially. You find the one that'll let them lease back for 6 months. And in 6 months, it's amazing how you can always find something. 2 months, maybe not. 3 months, maybe not. 6 months, you're going to find something for those people. And they're going to be able to take advantage of that, of this aggressive interest rate opportunity. And they're also going to be able to get a great price, and they're going to get a house because they're going to have the money sitting in the bank, and they're going to have the ability to buy the thing from the standpoint of qualifying without having to write contingent. And we need to be able to articulate that opportunity both to cold prospects and to warm prospects and to our number 1A clients, because it is such a extremely valuable strategy. And we can articulate it correctly. We can get people off the ledge. We can get people to do it, but we have to be able to demonstrate to them and articulate to them in a very, very confident and sophisticated and appropriate way how we can achieve their objective, instead of them saying, "Oh, there's nothing to buy and things are too high, I'm out." There are ways to avoid that objection. And if I thought that's what they should do, because there's not opportunity for them and it's not in their best interest to sell and buy, I'd be the first one in the living room saying not to do it. If somebody said, "Hey, I'm only going to be here for another 2 years," I would say, please don't sell your house. That makes no sense. That's going to be financially to your detriment and behaviorally to your detriment. And I'm not interested in making money on the sweat of your brow. I'm interested in being mutually successful. But if you've got somebody who has a 5-year plan, there has never been a better time to buy. And I know that sounds very counterintuitive, but it's the truth. And it's the truth for all the reasons that I said. So going after these listings in a way that, and cold ones too, right? By being able to articulate, because none of your contemporaries are articulating the value of the buying power of the interest rate environment, nor are they able to articulate the strategy of how to get people into a house and not put themselves in peril or jeopardy by extending that post-occupancy period to give them a very formidable opportunity to then get another house. So people aren't doing that. They're not articulating it like that, not with that level of professionalism and detail. And I mean, whether you're doing direct mail pieces that are commenting on that, whether you're working your existing database, whether you've got a whole host of other people in another environment that you can work. If we're not doing these things, if we're not taking advantage of these techniques, we are missing out on hundreds and hundreds of potential sellers that are at our fingertips. And trust me, most people, when that seller says, "Oh, I'm not interested because there's nothing for me to buy," they leave it at that. They say, "Oh yeah, you're right. I know, I just wrote 10 offers. It's not going to happen. I'll call you in 6 months." Not the answer, guys. So with that said, I'm gonna shut up, and I just want to hear people's comments. I want to hear different comments, poke holes in that strategy. Tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me how we can make it better. Tell me how the strategy could work better. What iterations of that strategy are you hearing? How do you approach people? Who are you approaching? Why are you approaching them? When are you approaching them? How frequently? What price points? Let's hear it all. Let's open it up.
Yeah, just unmute yourself and speak up. Anybody who would like to talk. Don't everybody talk at once.
Okay, I'll talk.
Thanks, Jen.
So like what Tom was saying, I've been doing this for the last year. I call past clients here and ask, have you refinanced yet? Have you thought about refinancing? I mean, you have to offer something of value, not just, hey, I need business, so you're giving them advice on refinancing. You refer them to your favorite lenders. They appreciate it. And like what Tom said, they now have probably $30,000 to $50,000, those first-time home buyers, of equity that they did not have, that they can, use to their advantage, whether they do an equity line of credit, maybe they want to do some remodeling at their home, fix something, pay off some debt. So it's just communicating. And letting people know that you're there and you're the advisor. And also another thing I will say to people when I call is say, hey, if you ever need a contractor recommendation for anything, and I say I've been through good and bad. And so now I have people that I know I can trust, that I can refer to clients that are going to do a great job for them, show up and do the job correctly. And the other day, I called one of my past clients. A week later, she called me and asked for a plumber recommendation. So that helps also, that you stay on top of their minds as their realtor resource. And then I think they're going to be more prone to want to refer people to you because they trust you. They obviously they're asking your opinion on a contractor or a lender. They're going to trust you and feel good about referring you to their friends and family. So they're not going to look stupid. I hope that makes sense.
No, I think those are all great thoughts, Jen. Really great thoughts. And I think it's all hey Jay, I'm going to go to you. I'm going to talk about Jody. Jody always has great thoughts. This is a great point. She said, would you put info in the agent notes post occupancy situation? So maybe I'm going to get rotten fruit thrown at me. I would not, because everything is a term and it may or may not present itself. I mean, if somebody says to you, hey, if you go back, if you say, hey, listen, it's got a $200,000 house that somebody has to have, and they're going to give you $300,000 for it, and they say, hey, I got to have it tomorrow, then maybe you go to a rental. I mean, if you're going to get an insane amount of money, you might not, because it's like saying the other thing. I mean, we know in this environment, Jody, that we're not going to, more than likely, most sellers, and I think it's unfortunate because I don't even think it's a problem most cases, but it happens. They're not taking VA, they're not taking FHA, they're not taking, there's all whole host of things. They're not taking any repairs. I mean, we're not putting in there that we're not gonna entertain a home inspection, but half of us know on most of these listings we're not. So I don't think it's appropriate to impede your ability to get a deal done by putting those terms in, because they're not absolute. It's a strategy that you may employ, but it's not necessarily gospel. So I don't think it's necessary, because nobody ever puts in we're not going to entertain a home inspection, even though we know on half of them we're not going to entertain a home inspection. So I don't think there's a moral or ethical obligation to include it at that particular time, because it's a term that may be something that you would ultimately arrive at, and more than likely you will. And I know that, to your point, Jody, it can seem like it's maybe unfair or doesn't disclose enough, but we don't know that we're going to invoke it based on the circumstance or the situation that we're in, because we may not have the luxury of doing it, or it may be that the offer is so good that we're willing to make that accommodation. So in my personal opinion, and it's nothing more than my opinion, I don't know that it necessarily meets the standard. Now, if there was something that was a title defect, or it's, something like that, that's different. I'm not saying we should ever participate in lack of disclosure on materiality, but we should do it in the context of what the law and what reasonable ethics apply, and not necessarily do it to the detriment of our client if there's not an absolute sense of certainty that that's exactly what's going to occur. Because I would say it this way: it's in the context of it being a term, and all terms are negotiable depending on the circumstances. So I think to put a foot in the grave, so to speak, on that particular item in the MLS is to the detriment of our client, and I don't have an ethical issue with it for all the reasons that I just said.
And honestly, it doesn't even matter, because most agents don't even read the agent notes. They don't read the showing instructions. It's very irritating.
I can attest to that, because
so if you're not going to read it and you don't know, that's your problem. You're not doing your job.
Not to be negative, but I was placed on a listing this weekend because of some circumstances, and it said to call so and so, and if I had $1 for every call I had, I'd be ready.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I just respond. I say, please read the agent notes.
Right.
When they text me, like I'm not your babysitter. Do your job.
I hear you. It's out there. Jay Haining.
Hey there, everybody. I've had an interesting situation with a couple different people that I think others will probably run into. And that's people that have deferred their payments this year because of COVID. And what's happened is now, in particular, Wells Fargo has contacted people offering short sales because they've skipped payments for a year.
No kidding.
So I had a client that we've come up with a solution, but they've wanted to refinance and try to refinance that in, and that's not possible. That has to be caught up first, which for my client was $15,000 that they don't have. So we found a way to borrow that from family and take that from a 401k to get that caught up, because basically what's happened is all these people deferred. It does not move to you at the end of your loan. It comes full hilt about now is when they're calling these due. So they have a year, up to a year's worth of deferments and a big lump sum, or they're considered delinquent. So we tried different people to refinance or roll that in or move it to the back. And so I've had two people now that were almost in a short sale position. Well, they wouldn't be in a short sale position in this market, but we're almost considering or feeling forced into having to sell their home. So I don't know if other people are having that yet, but for some of our people that are a little bit more stretched on a budget that took advantage of that without reading any of the terms, like my people, it could be a little bit of a hairy situation.
That was really insightful, Jay. And I have not heard that. That is very interesting. That's
Just talked
great.
to a client today about that, but she's also going to make probably 80,000, 80 to 90,000 on selling her house, and then she can pay off all her debt.
Yep.
And kind of have a clean slate. I mean, you can offer that as a solution to people that feel like they're drowning. Just, why not start over?
Would that not work, Jay? Let's see this. Would that not work to just close and just have that accrued interest, or are you worried about the time frame of it, like going in pre-foreclosure, or the context of that, or the?
No, my person can't move. She has a child and
I got it.
limited income, and there's no way she could replace the house that she's currently in.
I understand.
So for Jen's people, no, that's perfect. So another tip that I'm doing, I'm actively marketing to people who don't want another house. People who are willing to, older people who are considering going to assisted living or retirement communities. Those are my number one hunter people right now, is because they can actually make an extra year's worth of income for assisted living right now if they sell their house and do it early because of the profit margin. They also have never thought they could do it. So this is a good time for those people. People who are willing to move out of state or to an apartment. Those are who I'm looking for. I'm really trying to look for listings that aren't backed up with another buyer, or the people who they're starting to admit that, hey, I didn't read anything and I deferred my whole payment for a year and now I'm screwed. Those people, because this sounds harsh, but a lot of those people probably aren't real financial savvy to begin with. And like Jen said, they might have credit card debt, car debt, other stuff, that this might just be the time that they need to get out from under it, pay everything off and move to an apartment and start fresh.
Yeah, so unbelievable, very, very smart. So also people that have maybe haven't had the greatest financial circumstances, but can take the equity in their house to kind of clean everything up, taking that money off the table if they don't need to go into another buying situation. I love your idea of regarding older people and what have you, that maybe think, oh, they don't even know because they just don't pay attention, but sending a CMA to them and all of a sudden they look down and think they have a $200,000 house or they have a $275,000 house. That's happening. And so what else is there? Those are really great thoughts. So Jen and Jay, thank you for that feedback, because that was extremely valuable. Anybody else have something? Come on, there's all sorts of cool stuff going on. Poke holes in this stuff. I want to hear somebody disagree with us. Come on, Krista. Huh? What do you got? Nothing?
She's not, okay.
All right.
We figured it'd have more questions than this. Yeah.
What do you think, Tim?
Well, I haven't experienced what you guys are talking about yet, knock on wood. It hasn't been a problem. But yeah, it's actually gone pretty well. I do have one client that's in foreclosure. that really surprised me. He came very close to losing the home to foreclosure because he just wasn't paying attention. That one surprised me. But other than that, it actually hasn't been too bad.
What do you think about, what kinds of things are you doing with your existing database? What strategies are you using to kind of to make sure they're educated on the current market conditions? What kind of correspondence? What do you think is the most effective correspondence to send to an agent? Or
Well,
excuse me,
to a client, I will admit I haven't done anything like that in writing, but I have, even since the last fall. I've just been calling my clients, calling my A pluses, A's, B's, and B's on a regular basis, just having conversation with them and filling them in. For the most part, they've all been doing pretty well. I'm very lucky that most of my clients are pretty with it and they know what they're doing. So, but verbal, I mean, this has been the last year has been the best, the best time to truly develop and strengthen the relationships with my clients.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Sorry.
No, please bring it on. Because I mean, it's just been easier to call them.
It's so easy to call, and they want to talk to you. They're bored. Yeah. You know, they're very happy to talk with you and, you know, share whatever. Doesn't, you know, it can be a little real estate, a little personal, a little, you know, this happened that was funny. I don't know. But people are liking to talk on the phone that normally don't even like the phone.
Yes. Right. Including myself.
Oh.
Yeah, this has definitely been a relationship building time.
Yeah.
But it's been done. And they always ask, oh, so when's the bubble going to burst? And then I go into my spiel about how we're really not in a bubble. You know, that this is real true demand. These are young home buyers trying to buy homes. The average percent down is the highest it's ever been, you know, that kind of stuff. And people understand it and they appreciate it. So, yeah.
I would love to hear. That's a good one. These people are never going to get on this again. I mean, this is going to be the last time. I want to hear from a couple people. Aubrey, what do you say when they say the bubble's going to burst? What do you say when sellers say, I don't want to buy, or I don't want to sell because the bubble's going to burst, or there's, you know, I'm going to buy something, I'm trading up, and even though I have all this equity, I'm going to be screwed. What do you say?
Well, I start off by saying, well, I'm going to bore you with a bunch of statistics and market information and a little bit of my opinion, but I don't think we're in a bubble. And this might be a repeat for some people that have heard this already, but the last call we were on, I'd mentioned I'd spoken with Eric Almquist, and he listens to a lot of national speakers about where we're at with the market. And so I say, okay, in a normal neutral market, where there's enough buyers for enough homes, we can count on approximately 1% to 3% appreciation year over year. We're certainly not in a normal market where the low end of the appreciation is 6 and as much as 13 with the unique areas like Dundee and whatnot. So even if someone overpays, you will overpay for a home today. But in 2 years, if everything continues to go that it will, which we predict it will, your house will be worth 20% more. So, you know, Eric had mentioned that the average age of a first-time home buyer is 33 years old. And if you look at our generations now, the millennials, we were told they'd never buy a home because they like the ability to move with their job and be transient. Well, that's not true, because 1 in every 3 purchases involves a millennial now. And if you look at a bell curve of when the most millennials will be at that average first-time home buyer age, we're 2 years away from that. Right. So we're right at the beginning of all of this crazy. So the other part of it, this is the opinion part here, is that normally, you know, we had our largest generation prior to the millennials, the boomers, that should have been giving up their inventory, right? These are the folks that are supposed to be moving into their last home or assisted living. Well, who the heck wants to move into assisted living right now? Not many. Hopefully, Jay, you're finding some people. But also, those are the folks that went through the recession and they lost their shorts. So with interest rates being as low as they are, some of those folks are holding on to that home. They might be moving into the next home, but they're keeping this as an investment property to try and get back some of that money that they lost in the recession. I don't blame them, but they're not giving us the inventory that we need for that largest generation now. So I try to give them a background of that's why we're where we're at. Plus we've experienced tariffs on materials, concrete, resin, lumber, all that stuff's going up. So it's kind of the perfect storm. But for a bubble to burst, it needs to have no inventory high inventory and no demand, but we're not there. Our demand's going to continue for at least 2 years. I think at least another 3 or 4. The only part that I'm a little nervous about a bubble bursting is in that new construction 500 and above price point, because that's where the inventory is being created. We can't create any more inventory at a 200 to 250 mark. So what was the question, Tom?
Oh, you answered it. It was fantastic. Those are really, really cerebral thoughts. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate all that you said. I'm going to go to, hey, Ben, I got a question. What do you do? That was unbelievable. So I just want to piggyback on that. I want to keep this line of thought. So Ben, what happens when when you have that first time home buyer that you got in and they're selling and they bought at 150 and their house is worth 200 now, 5 years later, and they're going to go to 300. And what do you tell them when they say, hey, I'm not going to be able to find a house for 300? How do you articulate the opportunity, and what strategies do you utilize?
You're muted.
That's a great question.
There we go.
No, yeah, I wasn't muted. I was thinking
Oh.
how to answer that.
Okay, sorry.
And actually,
Sorry to put
Jay
you
and
on
I-
the spot.
No, that's okay. Jay and I were talking about this yesterday, and it's a hard balance from being transparent with a person and telling them the challenges and setting expectations over what it's going to take to buy a house, which is, we know the formula: 20 over, no home inspection, cover the appraisal, leave it dirty, and you can live there for free for 2 weeks. Like painting that picture for people without making it sound like a horrible decision to ever think about buying a house. And I think out of our own enthusiasm as agents, we love when we get a bazillion offers and we get an offer that is 20 over, no inspection, and our sellers love it. And we're celebrating those as victories, but I think it leaves buyers questioning, why would I buy a house? Should I buy a house? And so I wonder if the specific answer to our answer to that question you asked, Tom, is made easier if we all like mellow out a little bit and don't act like it's just the most horrible / best time to ever buy a house. And I even find myself over explaining the difficulty. And I should say there's challenges, but we'll definitely get you a house, and it's a wonderful time to buy something. And like, leave it at that. I unpack the dirty details so fast with buyers. And after talking with Jay, it's like, I should stop doing that, because I'm a terrible advocate for how great it is to become a homeowner when we act like it kind of sucks. So I've setting expectations too harshly. And I think I need to take a little bit more encouraging tone through all of that, because I'm not doing our industry any favors. So
Well,
I don't know. I stepped around your question a little, but
No, those are really helpful thoughts, because I think it's true. I think we can get a little Eeyore on this thing from a buyer's perspective. If
think
I
we're
said to
hurting
you,
ourselves by
what's that?
I think we're hurting ourselves by, a lot of people post that, oh, we had 45 showings and we had 15 offers and the house sold for $100,000 over asking price in 25 minutes. And most people that need an hour to decide, that's overwhelming to them. And then if we're running around like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to get anything accepted right now. Well, we're supposed to be the one that's the calm front. And I'm guilty of that too.
No, I think we all are.
Quite a few people, I think.
I think we all. Aubrey, you had a, thanks, Jay. Aubrey, you had a thought. I'm just kind of trying to rapid fire because I want that's such good thoughts. I'm trying to get everybody in. Aubrey, you had a thought?
Well, I think if you guys are doing your initial buyer appointment, you just need to prepare the buyer to not be an HGTV buyer, because we're still seeing buyers in that 200 to 250 price range that's saying, oh no, a red wall and I don't want to paint it. So I think that's a really good discussion to have up front. I had a $200,000 buyer and I told them that we need $50,000 saved to get you a house. So I just set expectations that we're looking at down payment, closing costs, seller closing costs, and then appraisal difference. Now we didn't have to use that 50,000, but just needed to be upfront with them. I also tell buyers at that appointment, let's go look at a couple of houses and let's make sure that they're dogs. We want to look at the worst houses out there, because that's how we're going to learn about, okay, this furnace is 74 years old and it's going to cost this much to replace. Here's the type of shingle on your roof. And this is how much a roof would. So you want to educate them and you want to take them through a couple of terrible homes. That way they're prepared and they know a good home when they see it and they have their money saved. They know the offer that they have to write. And then I always tell my buyers that we're going to get kicked in the teeth a few times before we get your house to work. But this is the guy's honest truth. Only one time in 15 years have I had a client say to me, I really wish I would have got that other house. I don't like this house as much. It's always been, boy, I'm glad that one didn't work out, because this is the one that happened.
So cool.
So I do tell them all of that stuff, but I just think you need to financially prepare them. Tell them, let's go look at a couple of dumps to get you prepared. And then just say, we will get beaten up a little bit, but we will find a house. And it is a good financial investment, purely because that appreciation will get us to where we need to be in a short period of time. So this may not be your forever home, but it is going to be, what a great financial stepping stone for you guys to get to that dream home much more quickly in this market. This is a market you absolutely should take advantage of for that reason.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought all that up. I was going to say, you have to have a sit down talk with your buyers before you show them anything. And you just have to be very, I feel, just very honest about what's happening. And like Ben said, maybe don't paint it so negatively, but they need to know what they're walking into. Because you can't not explain that, and then you see a house and they like it, and then all of a sudden you say, well, you're going to need to offer $25,000 more. Well, they're going to be like, what? I mean, what do you mean? So I just reiterate everything Aubrey said, because yeah, if you do that, it's going to make it much easier for yourself and for your client.
Agreed. Those are great thoughts, Jen. And thanks, Aubrey, for, so, okay. So we don't have a lot of time left, although I'll sit on for as long as people want to talk. So if a few want to hang around, we can talk. I'm horrible at this, because then I get down this rabbit hole on all this different stuff. So I'm just throwing like random stuff. We're so far off the topic, but it's okay. So what do you guys think about? So I'm getting a lot of calls like, oh my God, my buyer moved in, we couldn't have an inspection. There's water, from the bathroom above, the chandelier in the dining room is like a waterfall. And what do I do? And so people really love it when I say, oh, you should have had a home inspection. They don't think that's that funny when I say that. So I quit saying it. I didn't get a robust laughter on the other end of the phone. So I quit saying that, and I'm working on another spiel. So I'm all ears. But in all sincerity, I'm wondering if I were a buyer's agent and the house is $250, and let's say that we got by the grace of God, it's one of these deals where they're not going to look for 3 days. Okay. And I understand that it's, and maybe we think there's not going to be 37 offers, but maybe when this particular one, we think there's going to be 3 or 4, and we got a shot. And I know that seems punitive, but poke holes in this. And I know there's some easy holes to poke, but what about getting, and I know that like Bridget Vaca, and there's some different people that are looking at it. And I don't know if Paul Gaskin, I'm not trying to play favorites here. I'm not picking on anybody or trying to endorse necessarily, but I wonder if these abridged inspections kind of proactively, assuming that the seller doesn't have a pre-inspection, or maybe even if the seller does have a pre-inspection, if I was a listing agent, or if you're the listing agent and I said, hey, my client we want to have a second look at the house prior to offer submission, and my client wants to have an abridged home inspection, and we're not going to provide any results, but we want to get through there to do that. What say you? Who says, no way, Simmons, you're not allowed to do that? Who says go for it, or somewhere in between? Come on, somebody's got an opinion on this.
Are you saying, Tom, house inspections for informational purposes only, we won't submit the results of the inspection?
Correct.
But bringing them along as a showing is what he's saying.
I'm saying you bring the inspector with you. So, because here's where I'm getting at. This is going to be a you-know-what show, you guys. I get calls daily, multiple calls. Oh my God, my buyer is irate. And, I mean, we can have them sign, protect yourself with a home inspection and the fact that they're waiving. We can do all those things. But I'm just telling you, it is a big problem. So I'm just wondering, from a competitive standpoint, what should we be doing to protect buyers? And from a listing standpoint, what should we be doing as listing agents? If we say, no, you can't come back in, could there potentially be vulnerability for our client in a mediation or arbitration setting? I mean, I don't think legally there is, but it's just an interesting concept. I'm curious on people's thoughts on it.
Two things I do with the buyer is when we write an offer, and if they're not doing a home inspection, I just tell them, listen, you are going to call me in 30 days or 6 months or 9 months and tell me something's wrong. And I do have contractors ready to go, but something will happen. And I do I just had a buyer where they got an inspection after they bought the house. Fortunately, everything turned out great, but they just did it for their peace of mind. So there's that. The other thing is, if you, like for newer agents, if you can take the opportunity to find an inspector that will allow you to go on inspection walkthroughs just to sit and observe, so you can learn more about what to look for in homes, signs of street creep, deterioration of a shingle, what the proper age of a furnace should be. I think that's very helpful to your buyer in showings. You know, we're running into other agents into showings all the time, and I don't feel that many of those buyers are getting the opportunity for an education on the condition of a home before they buy it. So there's two things there. I've had a little bit of luck representing a buyer, writing an offer to a listing saying home inspection is for informational purposes only unless non-cosmetic repairs should exceed $5,000 or whatever. So that's worked a little bit for me on that end. And to just keep talking, Tom, from what you're saying, as we protect our listings, would you allow another inspection to go through? I think that depends on the agent. I mean, if I trust that other agent, because we're in an environment where buyers are losing 17 homes before they get an offer to stick. Buyer's remorse can easily set in, and they might use that inspection to walk. So for me, it would be, do I trust the other agent? That might be a lame answer.
No, it's a real one. And that's what I like about these conversations is you're being honest and it's the truth. If you've got a stinker on the other end, you're going to be more guarded. It's just the way it is. And that's another point that is so important to reiterate. That's why we catch more flies with honey than we do with vinegar. You want to be the agent that people want to work with. And you don't do that by being rude or distasteful or difficult. We've got to advocate for our clients, but there's a way to be kind and generous and gracious and polite and still get your client, because actually in the end, if that's your take or that's your approach, just from the standpoint of behaviorally, you're going to get more for your client than you are if you go the other way. Guaranteed, every time and twice on Sunday. So our reputations, that just kind of brings to this point to me, Aubrey, our reputations have never been at a higher premium as realtors. The better we're thought of from the standpoint of our personal reputation and our company's reputation in the real estate community, the brokerage reputation, but particularly the agent's reputation, to be honest, those are going to be critical components in how much success you're going to have. And people are going to respond to certain types of behavior and certain types of business practices. So I'm happy to continue on. I want people to feel, obviously they can, but anybody is welcome to sign off, because obviously we're past our hour. Tim, that goes for you. You probably have somewhere, I don't know if I'm a co-host, I understand you got life to live and what have you. I'm happy to sit here. Is there any other topics that people would like to discuss? We've got such a robust conversation and so much talent on this thing, and people are going to drop off, I know, and that's okay. It's no big deal. It should be over. Is there anything that people think we should discuss right now that would like to have a conversation about? Anything that's just sitting in your craw and you just have an issue with? Anything that we've said that you disagree with and you have a different perspective on? I'd love to hear that.
Katie Day.
Katie Day.
So, hi.
Hi, Katie Day.
Hello.
How the heck are you?
Wonderful. Wonderful. So one of the things that I think I'm struggling with right now is I have several listings coming down the pike. And as an agent in a market like this, a listing agent, I would like to push for my clients to have the home pre-inspected, but I'm looking for, I guess, how are other agents doing it? Because I think sometimes these sellers are looking at it like, well, God, my house is going to sell and I don't think I need to expend that money. And, it's kind of getting to that attitude where you could go in with a big piece of crap, they think. And I guess I I really would like to see them have their home pre-inspected just for the purpose of, I think you actually would get more offers when you have a pre-inspected home. What are other agents, I guess, are you getting that same pushback from like listings and from your sellers? And if you are, how are you addressing that with them to push for the pre-inspection?
Okay, real quickly, I just wanted to great thought. Just real quickly, I want to kind of define the positions because, and then I'm going to shut up because I really want to hear from you guys. So forever and ever, I told Aubrey she was crazy years ago. I said, why would you do a pre-inspection? That makes no sense. Everybody's going to get their own inspection. I don't know why you're doing that. I think you're an idiot. Why do you do that? And then it flipped and she said, Tom, you're an idiot. And then I said, you're right. I've been an idiot the whole time. I should have done what you said. And now I'm going to do what you said. And I still believe, so that's where I am. I believe the pre-inspections make the most sense. And so I'm there still. Some people have gone from, I didn't want to do pre-inspections because they were going to get their own inspection anyway. And why would I spend the money? To then they went to, well, I'm going to do pre-inspections because I think I'm going to get 17 offers instead of 4. And then I don't have to worry about that. And if I can get 10 people to write an offer and then I don't, to kind of where you were at, Katie. And then I've had people swing all the way the other way right now and say, hey, I'm going to get 3 offers anyway, and it's not going to move the needle. Why would I have my person spend $450 on a pre-inspection? And then what happens if we have to disclose something all the way there? I will tell you, I'm still in the middle ground, but all that said, what say you guys?
I think it's so important that you explain to sellers that to write everything that they can remember and think of that's happened to their home. Good, bad, ugly, insurance claim, how something was fixed, because like I tell them, the more honest you are, the more you write and tell, this buyer's just going to trust you more because you're telling them what's going on with the house. And a lot of times that alone makes people feel more at ease, and you're just going to get less pushback.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And that's a very good point. That's ancillary, but still relevant. What else, guys? Come on, somebody tell me. I want to hear somebody say pre-inspection's a bad idea, good idea. Somebody's got opinion. Come on. Aubrey, go.
If you guys keep letting me talk, I'll talk. But Katie, when you're showing buyers, are your buyers pulling up to houses saying, is this house pre-inspected? I'm getting that from more buyers. Are you guys?
Yes.
Like they're starting to expect it?
Not necessarily asking it at that point, like we'll go see it. And if they're interested, then I feel like there is a little bit of they're probably sensing my hesitancy too. Like, cause I don't know if I'm the minority here, but I really hate the thought of my buyers writing an offer on a house without an inspection.
Right. Of course.
And I think that hesitancy for me goes across pretty, yeah. So no, they don't say that, but I think I'm, as a buyer's agent, I'm the one who kind of is like, well, maybe we could ask, but I know very well if we ask for an inspection, we're not going to get our offer accepted.
Well, if this might help from your listing question, when I'm presenting that idea, I tell sellers we want to be as transparent as possible. And I like to make I love you buyer smorgasbord on the dining table for them when they see the home. And that would include the seller property condition disclosure, any warranties that you have remaining on appliances, possibly copies of your utility bills if that's helpful, and our pre-inspection report with any repairs made and receipts proving that work was done by a professional. And if they bring up that idea of why would we do that, my response to them is, well, I actually pay for the inspection. I use it as part of my marketing fees. So why wouldn't you? The cost is to me. And I see value in me paying that because it saves me hours of possible negotiation.
Yeah, that's true.
As a result of a home inspection. So I feel like it's making me money by saving me time. But the other part of it is, you guys have already mentioned it, I think you get more offers with a pre-inspected home, more quality offers. And then one more point is, man, how many times have we got a phone call after the deal's done and the air conditioner is not working? And I think your seller knew about it because the neighbors said they've always had problems with that. This is a way to protect our sellers from any legal action taken against them after the deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I spent $14,000 in 2020 on pre-inspections, and that sounds like a lot. It is a lot. But I saved myself so much stress and my client so much anxiety. And I just feel better about presenting a home pre-inspected. I understand why people, and I'm like Aubrey, I pay for it myself. I understand why people have reservations about doing pre-inspections. Everybody's going to buy it as is anyway. I just feel, I sleep better at night knowing I presented the home with a pre-inspection.
Thanks, Tim. Patrick Favara says, anybody having buyers question the reliability or trustworthiness of seller pre-inspections, I feel good about that, how to respond, or I feel good about how to respond to that, but I'm curious to hear if other agents face similar buyer concerns and how to address those concerns. I would tell them that's so 2019. Like, you don't get it. That boat has sailed. Like, you're just lucky you get anything. But I'm teasing, Patrick. It's a fair question. But anybody have any thoughts on that?
Patrick, if I have a buyer's agent who wants to do, doesn't trust my inspector, which I tell them, look him up. He's been around forever. He's a one-man show, so he can't pass the buck off to anybody else. But if they want to do another inspection, my seller's open to it. What I would suggest is that the seller would counter with a verbiage that's going to sound something better than what I'm saying. But basically it says, you can have your inspection, buyer, but we will only consider negotiating any items newly discovered from the buyer inspection. You can't come back then and say, hey, we want you to fix these 17 things from the pre-inspection that you provided. We're only going to consider negotiating any newly discovered items.
And Patrick, the only reason I was such a smart ass to you is because I love you and you're my buddy. But otherwise, I
no worries, Tom. So I guess, Aubrey, my question would be, not buyer's agents, but if I'm with my own buyer and he's saying, hey, is there a conflict of interest here? Should I trust an inspection on a house that I didn't actually pay for and actually contract out? And of course I say, let's look at the contractor, let's look at the inspector. I can tell you if they're certifiable, if they're quality, but I'm curious if anybody else has had their own buyers question the integrity of that pre-inspection process.
I think it used to be an issue. I don't think it is today. I think people are just damn happy that it's had anybody's sets of eyes on it, to be honest with you. I mean, I know that sounds pretty obnoxious and pretty amateurish, which is probably two of the attributes that are most favorable in my personality. But that's the reality of it, is, in my opinion, is that it beats the hell out of nothing, which is what half the time you're getting. And but it doesn't mean, the other thing is, what about saying, hey, we're going to take it as is, but we want the inspector to walk us through these items, and can we pay $100 or whatever to do that? What about that, Aubrey?
I don't have any experience with that one yet. I talked to my inspector about the pre-inspections we're seeing, which is a fantastic idea. Those poor businesses, I'm sure, are hurting right now. So they're being creative, which is wonderful. I haven't had that experience yet. Sorry, I don't know. Somebody else would be much better to talk about it than I will.
I would speak on that. Matt Baker, when Matt Baker does pre-inspections, he always says that he's happy to walk the buyer through at after, not before, but afterwards, so that he would do. He says he wouldn't charge, but I would always recommend a charge for that. But he's generous with that.
You're kidding.
I also think with Patrick's question about if buyers are questioning that home inspection, the home inspector still has to stake their reputation on their inspection, right? So the buyer questioning that, then, I mean, that the home inspector still has to stand behind the home inspection, even if it wasn't done for them. Isn't that right?
I agree with that. Who's selling something in the background? I wish you were more like them. Tracy is? Come on. She's all right. All right. Well, this was great. Anybody else have any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I have 1 second, but I'm in a car wash.
Okay.
Sorry. On the pre-inspection agreement, technically that inspection agreement is between the seller and the inspector. So I'm not sure if it would really carry over to the buyer legally. Does that make sense? Sorry. I'm almost done. I'm going through the dryer.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I don't think anybody would disagree with that, Tammy. I don't think people think that the inspection is owned by the buyer. I don't think anybody's suggesting as much. I think it's more just what Krista's point is, I think, and I don't want to mischaracterize this, is that they have to have an objective reality as it relates to their findings, and for their professional credential to be what it is from the standpoint of their professionalism and their obligation, they can't do a quote unquote a fluffy inspection just because it's for the seller. And in my experience, to be honest with you, I have never had to the point where I was almost like, I've had inspectors do a few pre-inspections here and there where I've been like, damn, man, they just kicked us in the teeth. I'm like, that was brutal. So I have not had the experience where I've had an inspector compromise their integrity for the benefit of saying, oh, this listing agent gives me a lot of business, or, oh, this seller ordered it. That has not been my experience. I have never had an inspector lack integrity as it relates to their findings. If anything, I kind of was a little pissed at them sometimes because I thought they were kind of over the top on some arbitrary things, but that's that's probably my own personality defect. But
I missed everything because I got cut off.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, Tammy, that
I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying I've never had an experience where a home inspector, where I thought the home inspector had performed the inspection any differently, whether or not it was ordered by the buyer or the seller, that they
I
have been
agree.
totally honest and sincere in
Yeah.
their findings.
And Paul will always still go back and recheck stuff, or, he takes care of everything. He's not gonna let somebody just, flounder. But
Yeah.
I just thought people do need to know that those contracts are between the seller and the inspector.
Yeah, no, I
Inspection company.
agree with that. And that's a really
Yeah.
great clarification, because that's true. The buyer does not own that inspection.
Yeah.
if
And
the
he will
seller-
go out too, to, do the or walkthroughs or whatever. It's just being a one-man shop. Sometimes the schedule's a little harder than the multiple people companies.
Yeah. Jay, thank you, Tammy. Jay put in the chat, should we counter if they want an inspection so it's done in 7? So that addendum does that, Jay. You know that addendum we have? I don't know if you're familiar with it, Jay, but we have that that home inspection addendum where we can limit the scope of the home inspections, and I think some people are putting them in the associated docs. So one component of it is they define the inspections, or you ask them to define the inspection. Certainly they're not obligated to do so, but that's what the addendum contemplates. It also has an area where you can limit the amount of days and limit the scope. So there is that addendum out there that facilitates that. Are you familiar with that addendum, Jay?
I am. I didn't know though if I should counter back with that when we receive an offer on a house, or that would be in the associated docs to begin with.
I would put, my personal opinion is I would put it in the associated docs, but that's tomato. The reason we have these panels is because I know less than you guys, so I'm always happy to hear what actually people that are smart are doing. But I don't know. Does anybody have an opinion on limiting the scope of the the new purchase agreement? And to Jay's point, any thoughts on that?
Well, I just think it needs to be done in a certain time frame. Otherwise, you're hanging in limbo for could be a few weeks.
Well, it's 18 days. I mean, it's 14 days, and then well, here's the worst part about it. It's both ways, right? Because it's even worse for the poor seller or excuse me, purchaser, because you could have your inspection done on day 1 and they don't have to answer you till like day 17 or 18 or whatever that is. So it's kind of a screwy deal both ways. I not to be it's disparaging of the GPR MLS new purchase agreement, but I'll just suffice to say that I would have done it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, this was great. You guys are awesome as usual. Really good stuff. We had 20 people stay over 20, or over half the people stay over 20 minutes, which.
Can I ask a question really quickly in reference to what Tammy said about the inspection contract being between the the seller and on the pre-inspection. So when a buyer comes in, if something occurs, that normally would be maybe the liability of the inspector missing something. Is that not the case anymore?
That's a really
That liability stops?
That's a really great question. So that's a great question. So I'm going to tell you what I think, and this is off the cuff. God, Sheila, Jesus, we were almost off the phone. Why'd you have to? We were so close. No, in all honesty, so it is true that from a professional standpoint, the buyer would not own the inspection. So from that standpoint, that's true. However, theoretically, if the buyer relied on the professional opinion of a qualified inspector, and that inspector was negligent in their findings, theoretically, I think there could be exposure there. However, it would be one way removed, and it would have to be highly egregious, I would think, almost fraudulent, for them to be able to pierce that second level. But I would not say it's impossible, because if they were either utterly incompetent to the point of, like something can't even think about how egregious it would be, but probably more particularly if there was like they omitted it because there was some sort of coercion or something, there would be culpability, because it could go under a statute from the standpoint of fraud or utter negligence or something like that. And more than likely what may happen is the buyer may sue the seller, and then the seller may have to, or take the seller to mediation and binding arbitration, and they may have to name, and the seller could in a certain instance need to name the inspector. That's in the weeds, but yes, it is a point removed, and it would be more difficult. Yes.
I agree. I did not mean to open up a can of worms. I'm so sorry.
No, it's this is
So
good
bad.
stuff. No, there's
But
value.
yeah, I agree with you, Tom. I mean, you're right. I would
Yeah.
think something like that for sure. But I personally, I like pre-inspections. I think everybody should get them. At least gives the buyer some kind of peace of mind
Yeah.
on top of, and there's a lot of good inspectors out there, but I still think they're good to have, even though that chance could happen.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Well, thanks, Tammy, because that gives great perspective from, of course, and for those of you who don't know, that's Tammy Gaskin, speaking from the standpoint of her capacity as working with Paul Gaskin, her husband, who is a home inspector, Gaskin Home Inspection. So she's kind of talking, and she's obviously licensed realtor. So, and similar to Bridget Vaca. So they've got interesting perspective in the sense that she wears a couple hats, which is valuable. So, okay, well, God, I know I'm almost sick of listening to myself talk. So that must mean that your ears are bleeding. So enough is enough. That was fun. Great stuff. Tim is gone. I don't know if he's ever coming back. I don't know that I blame him. So, but thanks a lot. It was really good dialogue. I always am so appreciative. I always learn so much from the great insight. And again, over 40 people participating in the middle of a crazy selling market. So great participation. Again, over 100 people at the sales meeting, great participation. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of all of you guys. And for those of you that don't know, I did say you guys outperformed the market in April. We had a 60% increase when the market was up 30%. So you actually doubled the productivity and the efficiency of the market as a whole, which is an incredible testament, I think, to this kind of dialogue and our continued ability to grow together. So I can't tell you how appreciative I am for that and how special I think it is. And it's a pleasure and a privilege to work for each and every one of you every day. It's a dream come true. So thank you. Have a great day. Talk soon.
It's all good. Thank you.